Greek gods turned into mortals, opening dungeon doors with sulfuric acid and then neutralizing it with baking soda. I love you so much, Riordan! Hi everybody, Carla here, and as I mentioned before, today I'm going to do a review of The Dark Prophecy, which is the second book in the Trials of Apollo series by Riordan. Of course, the Trials of Apollo is the, technically speaking, third series in the Camp Half-Blood continuity. First it was the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, then the Heroes of Olympus, and then the Trials of Apollo. So if you haven't read this book and want to get to read it, remember that there's 3 series that you have to read before, but by all means go ahead and read them because they're all so great. So I just finished reading this book. I'm going to review it really quickly. I have to say I actually really liked it. I wasn't sure that I would, because I had been reading the sneak peeks that they had released through the year and whatever, and it came to my attention that unlike the previous book, which was the Hidden Oracle, which took place in Camp Half-Blood, so we got to see a lot of familiar faces, this book would deal a bit more with the new characters to this arc, to this series. It would focus a lot more on Apollo and Meg. Apollo, of course, we know, but Meg is relatively new, and I hadn't quite pegged her yet as of the previous book. And there wasn't going to be that sense of familiarity that we have with Camp Half-Blood and the characters in Camp Half-Blood, so I was a little bit worried that I would find this book to be boring, I guess, or just not interesting enough, or that I wouldn't get to love these characters. I really shouldn't have worried, because Riordan is Riordan. He will make me love a rock if he sets out to it. I'm sure of it. So I actually quite like this book. I think I may have liked it more than the previous one, except for that nostalgia factor of being in Camp Half-Blood. It always makes me enjoy things a bit more. But I think by itself, as far as the plot and the characters and the development goes, I think I like this one better. So I'm just gonna do a review, a really quick review. Warning, as always, there are going to be spoilers. I'm not holding back on anything, so if you haven't read the book yet but want to read it, please go ahead and pause this video, go read the book, and then come back to watch this video, because I will not be holding back from any details whatsoever. So, you've been warned.
Danger, Will Robinson! Danger! No, Will Robinson! Danger!
Now, let's start talking about the book itself. And first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the plot. When I first became aware through the sneak peeks that this book was going to mainly be taking place in Indianapolis, I laughed. Because, no offense to anybody who lives in Indianapolis or Indiana, but I can't anymore help but take Indianapolis as some sort of political commentary. Maybe I'm just too involved in US politics at the moment. I can't help it, it's interesting. But every time Indiana is mentioned, I think of you-know-who. So, I don't know, I keep thinking that this is some kind of political commentary. I know that Rick probably didn't intend it that way, although he is very politically minded, and he talked about politics a lot in his Twitter and social media in general, so I tend to believe that he didn't do it on purpose, that he was more going for the stereotypes of the Midwest rather than the politics of it all. But still, that's kind of how I interpreted it somehow. I don't know, I mean, I've never been to the Midwest. I think the closest to the Midwest I've ever been is Nebraska. I'm not entirely sure that Nebraska is in the Midwest, but it certainly seemed very provincial. I mean, it was a beautiful place, don't get me wrong, but I'm more of a city person, so when I went there, I definitely found it very provincial, and I get the feeling that a lot of the Midwest is like that. Not all of it, of course, there are cities and stuff, so not all of it. But if even Indianapolis, which is supposed to be a big city, still was presented in that stereotype kind of way. I know stereotype is not necessarily the truth for everybody who lives there, but just the idea that Rick would go with the stereotype, it made me... There were a lot of lines he made, a lot of jokes he made about Indianapolis and just generally Midwesterners that made me think back to the political climate of the United States right now. So, sorry. I mean, the Blemye cracked me up for like the entire length of the novel. I thought they wouldn't. I genuinely thought after their first scene where they were revealed that I would get tired of the shtick, but I really didn't. They cracked me up until the very end of the novel. So sorry, Indianapolis, but it was just it was funny. What can I say? My main comment about the plot this time around is that I felt, unlike with other Rick Riordan novels where there are entire sort of arcs of the books where I am not as interested. For example, if you watch my review for the Magnus Chase book, The Hammer of Thor, I do mention that there are some like entire segments of the book that I just didn't really care for. I mean, it wasn't entertaining enough for me. In this book, however, I find that all the arcs had entertaining parts to them. Even if I wasn't entirely entertained by the general gist of the arc, at least there were things about each arc that made me interested. So none of them felt boring or slow, which did happen a little bit in The Hammer of Thor. So I really like that. And what I mean by that is, for example, the zoo part of it, when they had to go to the zoo to rescue the griffins, it felt a little bit too easy. So the whole time I had in the back of my head is like, just going to the zoo and release the animals feels a bit too easy for me. Like, you know, there's no like massive fortress in the zoo or anything that you have to trick your way around or whatever. It's a zoo. So it didn't particularly seem like it would be interesting, but I was really entertained by the entire dynamic between Lester and Calypso. And then the griffins and the ostriches and all that stuff was just so over the top that it made me laugh, it made me interested. So that's how you sort of save an arc, I guess. You throw enough interesting tidbits into it that even something that may on paper seem a bit too easy actually seems interesting. I really like the sewer adventure, basically. At least up until they made it to Commodus's ridiculous like stadium thing, which okay, I understand that it's the Romans, it's a Roman thing to like put up spectacles and you know, throw people into stadiums to fight each other. It's a Roman thing, I get it, but it just seemed so ridiculous that Commodus would be like practicing for the naming ceremony and stuff. I'm like, really? It just felt weird. Up until that point, I had liked the whole thing with the sewers and the sea serpent, or sewer serpent, I guess in this case. I found that really cool. But then when they actually started fighting, it was so freaking ridiculously over the top that you can't just help but love it, because it's not your average Roman spectacle fight to the death thing. It's more like race cars and elephants and ostriches, Dracaena with too many consonants in their names, and oh my, it's like too much. And it really made me laugh. Again, Rick saves the arc of this plot just with humor and charm, and it's really interesting to me how he does that. On the other hand, the Cave of Trophonius did not have much action in it, so I thought it was going to be like bland in a way, and it tends to bother me when the characters sort of get out of situations by using really stupid tricks on the bad guys, because I don't know, the bad guys are stupid, so they fall for it every time. It bugs me. I know it shouldn't, because this is a book for kids. It's a children's lit series, so that's why Rick does it. However, I'm not a kid, so I don't see those tricks and those stupid villains I don't like them as much, so it bugs me sometimes when he does that, and he did that with the fandom-y in the Cave of Trophonius. Like, Lester basically tricked them into blowing up their own oracle. So I don't know that I like that trick him rather than fight him mentality. But at the same time, the Cave of Trophonius arc, we learned so much about Meg, and we watched Apollo grow so much as a character that I can't help but love that too. The important thing was not necessarily what Apollo was doing with the fandom-y, but what was going inside his head. That was what made it more interesting to me. So I really loved the arc, even if I thought I wouldn't. And on top of that, there are so many excellent quotes to live by in this book. Like, I'm not one for self-help. I really am not. But there were so many quotes. I don't know if you know this, but I like highlight my books. Like, highlight my favorite quotes from my favorite books. Like, see, highlight. And I know that's probably sacrilege to book lovers out there, but I do. All my books, I tend to highlight my favorite sections just because I like to reread them from time to time. And there were so many quotes like this. So many great quotes. Like, for example, this one is, "What doesn't transmit light creates its own darkness." I love that. Like, those are inspirational quotes that Rick just happens to throw in that I really love always. But this time around, there were so many of those that I enjoyed, that I really liked it. Be sure to stop at my Redbubble store, by the way, because I'm making art with so many of these quotes. You guys will want to purchase something, I'm sure. Now I'm gonna move on a bit to the fan servicey aspect of this, and I have to explain before I go on about this, because I think sometimes authors, especially when they come to a certain degree of popularity, and they have a lot of contacts with the fans and stuff, so they know what the fans sort of want, which parts of their work they latched onto the hardest, what their priorities are when it comes to this fandom. I think sometimes authors go a little bit too far in trying to give the fans what they want to see, and I tend to not like that. That's a lot of the problem I have with, for example, J.K. Rowling just coming out after Harry Potter was over and giving all this information that was never in the books. Not that I mind the content of that information at all, it's just the idea that there were so many things that the fans still wanted to know that she is basically just telling us without writing it in the book. And you can see sometimes, for example, when the author keeps writing about that same universe, that they take little detours to sort of make a point that the fans want to see. Several of my favorite authors have actually done that because they know what the fans want to see, so they want to give it to them. But as an aspiring writer, it's really weird to me. Not weird, just unsettling to me. Because I think authors should have their plan, and they should follow their plan, and they shouldn't let the fans' opinions sort of take them out of that plan. They shouldn't take huge detours just to give the fans something that they want to know. I think if you're an author and you created these characters and you know what they will be like and how they will act, you shouldn't let the fan response sort of change that. So it bothers me when authors do that a little bit. And Rick Riordan is no exception. He's very active on Twitter. He answers fans' questions on Twitter. Through his social media, he knows what his fans want. He knows where their priorities lie. And he's done certain things in the past that I immediately took as a response to fan demand. But the thing is, with Rick, he's actually really cautious about it. I don't think he necessarily changes his plans in response to the fans. I think he has a plan. He knows where he wants this series to go, and he just throws in little details that the fans will love. But I will admit that while for the most part he's done well with it, it does worry me sometimes that with one of these books it won't be done as well. So it bothers me. For example, take The Hidden Oracle, for example. I'm pretty sure that the biggest reason why the book centered so much around Nico and Will, for example, and we had all these little moments from Nico and Will, is because Rick knew the fandom was onto that, and he knew that we wanted to see more of that. And that's great. I mean, he did it well. I'm not complaining that I got to see Will and Nico in a relationship or anything. I loved it, but I worry that he sort of is writing these things depending on where the fandom wants him to go. And I think a lot of that happened here as well. For example, I am pretty sure the entire reason why Rick made Leo and Calypso central in this book is because the fans like Leo. The fans wanted to see more of Leo and Calypso's relationship, mainly because they thought it was sort of insta-love in the past. And I think he's, in a way, sort of giving priority in this series to the characters that the fans either want to see more of or haven't seen enough of. And it does worry me sometimes. That said, I don't think there's come to a point yet where I've been like, oh, this bugs me. Like, this particular thing that he did bugs me. He's actually done it really well, so I don't mind as much. I just wanted to point out some of the things in this book that definitely felt fanservice-y to me. But it's not that they're bad things, it's just that it's kind of obvious to me that they were added there for the fans. You know? There's a line, I don't think he's crossed it, and I hope that he never crosses it because that would bother me. But he's still on the right side of the line. There are still some things, like for example, Thalia's appearance in the book. I don't mind, I love Thalia. I just wonder if he put her there because the fans want to see Thalia. And moreover, the fans want to see Thalia talking to Apollo, because that's a thing that we've been wanting since the third book in the Percy Jackson series, and it hasn't happened. And now that Apollo is a main character, now Rick is like, oh, okay, I'll have Thalia here interacting with him. In fact, they kind of flirted a little bit, which I found was kind of funny. But I love it because I've been wanting to see it. I just worry that Rick did it exclusively to please the fans. Also, there are things that he reveals. For example, this whole... the fans for years have been asking, and are the Hunters of Artemis exclusively opposed to relationships with men, or are they opposed to any relationships? It's been a thing that the fandom has been discussing and talking about and writing about and expounding about since Artemis was introduced and the Hunters were introduced. And I think this is something that Rick added to the book mainly to answer that question. Emmy and Josephine being together and having to leave the Hunters. Now, I'm glad that it's answered. I hope he didn't create these characters exclusively to answer that question. I hope these characters were already in his mind. Leo, again, I think Leo is one of the characters that fans feel has gotten sort of the short end of the stick a lot of the time, because the Heroes of Olympus series tended to focus a lot on Jason, and Leo was sort of left by the wayside a little bit. So I'm sure that Rick brought him back just to give him some protagonism because the fans wanted it. Also, the whole Leo and Calypso relationship, because for the longest time fans have been complaining about Leo and Calypso. They say it's insta-love, they say it came out of nowhere, and now we're expected to assume that they're in love forever and ever, but we've barely even seen them interact, and fans just blah 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 blah. They harped a lot about that for the longest time. Now, I had no problem with Leo and Calypso. I actually rather liked them. I was glad that they found someone to be with, because both of them have had very little luck in the love department. So I shipped them. I never had any problem with them, but I know the fans have been relentless about this and complaining that the pairing is just not legit enough or something because they only had one book together, and then all of a sudden we're supposed to assume that they're in love. I know, they've been harping about it for years, since Blood of Olympus at least. They've been harping about this. So I'm entirely sure that the fact that Leo and Calypso came back, and now that we've seen a little bit more of the difficult aspects of their relationship, and that it's not all love and rainbows and hearts and puppies and stuff, they have their issues and they're an actual real couple. I have no doubt that Rick did that to respond to the fans. Now, I don't mind because now they can shut the freak up about it, finally. Yes, they have problems. Yes, they're not perfect. Yes, they have issues like any other relationship, and they're going to deal with those issues, but they care about each other and they're gonna give it a try. Their fandom. Are you satisfied now? Come on. In the latter part of the book, we get to see demigods from other pantheons, which was interesting. I mean, we've seen Greek, we've seen Roman, we've seen Norse, we've seen Egyptian. I know that fans wonder, and I know that Rick is actually coming out, or spearheading, I guess, a new imprint of books where other authors from minorities that aren't really represented in the literature industry will write about other characters from other pantheons, and I think this was his way to sort of like backpilot it, I guess, with Jamie. Again, it's something that the fans have been asking for the longest time, so I think he did it in part for that, to sort of answer to the fans, and in part to sort of backpilot his new imprint, which I think is smart, honestly. I noticed it, but I don't think it's a bad thing. Talking about the characters, though, I have to say, again, I thought I wouldn't be interested in these characters because there were so many of them that were new, but I have to say, I really love them. Like, most of them. For example, I now officially love Calypso. I was always very sort of ambivalent about her because I couldn't really pinpoint her personality. I think I love her now. She's so cool. I love her. She's adorable. And of course, yes, Thalia! Thalia is pretty much one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite character in this series. And every time she comes up in any of these books, the book is officially like 10,000 times better than it would have been just by her mere presence. So I'm so glad to see her again. As far as Lester goes, I love Apollo, I'm not gonna lie. I've always loved him since the Titan's Curse, but it felt to me in the previous book that he wasn't really making much progress, I guess. He was still sort of the same Apollo and wasn't really learning much of the lessons. In this one, like I said, I did notice just how much he's grown. And because of that, he's grown on me a lot. More than just Apollo in general, but just Lester as a character. And Apollo as he goes from being this vain, self-centered god to actually being a decent person. So he really has grown on me. And even Meg has grown on me, which is really strange. I didn't really care much for Meg before. I didn't think I could sort of pin her personality yet. She seemed very cartoonish in a way to me, but I really like her now, and it has a lot to do with the fact that we've learned so much of her backstory as well through this book. That's really, really good for me, because I honestly wasn't expecting to like Meg all that much, but I do now. I thought the way station was awesome. I love the idea that there's somewhere else apart from the camps that is sort of a sanctuary for demigods, because come on, you have one camp in New York and one camp in California, and what happened to the rest of the middle of the United States? Like that really sucks if you have nothing for the people in the Midwest and surrounding areas or in the South. I hope there are many other way station like refuges for demigods who need support and help and just a roof over their heads, because they have so many issues and many of them don't have great home lives. I was really glad to see it, honestly. And I like the sort of the magic of it, how rooms would change, how rooms would sort of appear depending on the current needs of the people inside. I thought that was really cool. Reminded me a little bit about Harry Potter, which was really fun because I'm a fan of both fandoms, so that's really interesting. And Emmy and Josephine basically stole my heart. I love them so much. They're so great. I love that they have like distinct personalities. Like Josephine is more of a Leo / mechanic and tinkering with stuff type, and then Emmy is like a little bit more of a house mom, and she's all about cooking and chores, and I love them, and I would like to have them as like unofficial grandmas because I love them so much. I didn't expect that I would fall in love with any new characters, but I totally did. And also, can we get to see a little bit more of Hunter Kowalski, please? Because I thought she was really interesting, and I'm half afraid that I'm never going to see her again. Rick tends to do that sometimes when there are like named characters that people really, really like, and then all of a sudden they never appear again. Yes, I'm talking about Lee Fletcher. As far as the shipping goes, again, talking about Leo and Calypso, I just hope the fandom is satisfied now, because honestly all the harping about how fake they were was kind of annoying. So please, now that they've been a little bit more fleshed out as characters individually, the relationship has been a little bit more fleshed out as well. I hope that people actually give him a chance now, because they never did in the past. Fandom, please listen to me and listen to Rick in this book, because they are an actual real couple with actual real issues, but also actual real love for each other. And also, did I mention that I love Emmy and Josephine? Because I love them. They're so fantastic. I love them so much. I adore that they gave up everything. They gave up immortality just to be together, and that is just so I love them so much. As far as negatives in the book, there's always some. It's not a perfect book, even if I did like it. I couldn't really peg down who Commodus was supposed to be. Not in the literal sense, obviously I know who he is, but like his personality. I mean, other than self-centered, wants daddy's love, and loves killing just because he can, I don't know that there was much more to him. He seemed rather one-dimensional to me. Maybe because he didn't die, we'll get to see him in a later book and we'll get to like get a little bit more from him. But I didn't like him as a bad guy. Where Nero seemed sort of the typical mwahaha evil shadowy dude, Commodus was just like that one dumb rich frat boy who thinks he can sort of do anything he can because he has money and power. But it fell flat with me. It felt very one-dimensional, so I guess we'll see. And I also did not like Brito Martis very much. I don't know what her personality was supposed to be, because she sort of seems really like flirty on one side and like brash on the other side. I don't know what to make of her, really. Like she seems very much like a caricature of what a goddess is supposed to be. I don't know that she has a lot of personality. And the whole Etirsis thing is like, he's supposed to be good now, I guess. What? Okay, I know he's mad at Commodus. That doesn't make him a good person. He was killing people and enslaving people just a few chapters ago, and now he's our friend. It's really weird. I mean, I like Etirsis as a character. I wouldn't have minded if he had been like some underrun demigod or whatever, but he actually killed people for Commodus. I don't think I can just get over that. So I'm not sure that we'll ever see him again, but I'll be okay if we don't. It was too big of a leap for me. And that's about it for my negatives, but I just want to mention some questions that I still have, because obviously this is just the second book in a series, so of course not everything is going to be solved. But the questions that I find are more pressing right now is, first, is Georgie Apollo's kid? I need to know. This cannot go unsolved. I need to know this. Come on, Riordan. Also, they mentioned something about the third triumvir having something to do with horses, and I was just like, oh my god, Caligula, yes please! Because I think I mentioned this in my review of the Hidden Oracle, but I really need Caligula to actually be one of these triumvirs. I don't know why. It's maybe because he's sort of the first name that comes into my mind when you talk about crazy, weird-ass Roman emperors, and I fully expect, you know, Rick to actually correct the record on the urban legend behind Caligula, the whole try to put a horse as a minister story. I know it's not exactly like that, there are details to it, but there's no denying that Caligula was cuckoo. So I really, really hope that this third triumvir that is somehow related to horses is Caligula. I will be really sad if it's not, I'm just saying. If it's not Caligula, I hope Caligula at least gets mentioned somehow. But I really want it to be him. I really want it. In conclusion, this was an excellent book. I might even like it more than the first book in the series. I won't go as far as to say I do like it more, but for the most part, I found the plot to be a little bit better distributed, and just the things that made it interesting were all spread throughout the book and not just located at the climax. So I thought that was, in that sense, it was better than the Hidden Oracle. The Hidden Oracle still, I love. It has a special place in my heart because it takes place in Camp Half-Blood again, and we see so many familiar faces. This book made me love the new characters though. It kept me entertained. It gave me so many questions for the next book in the series that I just can't wait to read it, really. I find, all of a sudden, I find Apollo's journey back to being a god so interesting. And not just necessarily because I want him to see him go back to being a god, but just because he's learning so much about the mortal world as well. And it's really interesting. I really like this book. It was crazy funny. It was fun. It was over the top. It was classic Rick Riordan here. I'm really excited about it, and I'm really excited about the series as it goes on. Can't wait to read the next book. And yep, that's about it for my review of the Dark Prophecy. I don't yet know what I'm going to be talking about next week. I'm currently reading Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare, which is the second book in the Dark Artifices series. I'm reading it now and I'm really liking it so far, and I'm really reading it really fast, but I don't know that I'll be done with it by the end of the week because it's like 700 pages long, so even if I read it fast, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'll have it done by next week. Other than that, I don't know what I might talk about, but as always, if you have any suggestions, just drop them in a comment. If it's anything, any topic that I can talk about, anything geeky in books, TV, movies, any sort of thing like that, if it's anything I know anything about, if I'm knowledgeable about that topic at all, I will make sure to add it to my list of topics to talk about in the future. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you like my stuff, please subscribe to my channel. I'm always happy to see more people subscribing and sharing and liking and commenting, because that's why I do this. I just want to have a conversation about my favorite topics with my fellow fans. In the meantime, you can find me on social media. I am on Twitter and Instagram at girlsoweird with underscores between the words, and I am on Tumblr at girlsoweird with hyphens between the words. You can find a Facebook page for this vlog at facebook.com/FreakingNarnia, and as usual, be sure to visit my main website at FreakingNarnia.com. All my videos are up there in case you missed something and want to catch up. It's all uploaded there, so be sure to check that out. Also, make sure to stop by my Redbubble store where I make art based on quotes from my favorite fandoms, and then you can use that art to print on different merchandise such as t-shirts and dresses and computer covers and coffee cups and stuff like that. There's a little bit in there for everybody, so be sure to check that out and maybe purchase something if you're in the mood. It really does help me. On top of that, please remember that I'm also publishing these videos as podcast episodes in case it's easier for you to listen to a podcast rather than watch a video on YouTube. You can find it under Talks from Freaking Narnia in iTunes and Stitcher, so be sure to look it up. I actually uploaded quite a few episodes. I think I'm up to episode 9 by now, but I will be uploading more of these episodes in the future, so look those up and tell me if you like that. And that's about it from me today. I will see you guys next Friday with another talk from all the way in Freaking Narnia. If you're in the Midwest, watch out for Blamie. Bye guys. The Trials of Apollo, the Dark Prophecy, which is definitely felt fanservice-y to me, and Are the Hunters of Aramis. Are the Hunters, and then later in the letter, Refuge. Anything he can, because he's the first book in the hidden